I see you now. You're lovely.
Hi.
All fleek with the hair, got the
You
little
know.
art, and yeah, you're doing good. So let's go.
I
So
know. I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, guys have it so easy. You don't have to do your hair. Like you guys just wake up and roll.
about the closest thing I do is I do the lines on my beard and stuff every few days, but
Yeah.
it's
Low
not near that
maintenance.
of you ladies. So, uh, well, thank you for being here. And
Yeah.
Suzanne Ryan is who that is, you guys. I have known Suzanne forever and ever. Amen. You've been a pillar in the keto world. You started out with all your videos under the Keto Karma brand, and then you created Simply Keto. The book was tremendous and huge. Then you wrote a book that kind of went off the deep end of what you've been doing for so long, and suddenly you start talking about mindset and like things from your past and trying to resolve those things and how they impacted you wanting to become obese and oh my gosh, like all these things. And you called that book Beyond Simply Keto, which really isn't a lot about keto. You got a few recipes in there, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's the same like over 100 recipes and some like basic intro to keto, but I was like, this is all the main stuff that I didn't talk about in Simply Keto that I should have talked about.
And so, my heart is along that same line. So you're like, hey, let's talk about this. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it. Because this mental part is the piece I've been working on myself for the last 2 years. When you first met me, what was it, like 8 years ago? Um, this wasn't even on my radar screen. I didn't even know it was a problem. When did it happen for you? When was your kind of, I need to work on that mindset piece?
I feel like it like trickled in little by little, but it definitely didn't really hit hard until I had lost all of the weight. And then because I was expecting that magical moment of like, okay, I lost 120 pounds. Everything's going to be better. This is like all of my problems are going to be fixed. And then I like looked around and I'm like, okay, I'm just skinnier with all the same problems. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much more that I need to uncover.
And see, why doesn't anybody talk about this? Like you and I have been very successful at losing weight, and but nobody talks about then what? Like you have this goal, and my best friend is Brittany, and Brittany always talked, and she also had a huge success story with keto. She
Yeah.
said, "I made a goal to lose weight." What happened when the weight loss goal went away? So what did happen to you?
Well, I think the thing is that in our culture and in general, we romanticize being thin, like, and losing weight. Like, it's like this thing, this missing element of like what's going to make us this like leveled up person or to be attractive to others or to be treated equally, which is like so ridiculous. I mean, I'm sure you felt there was like a shift in how people even interact with you when you lose weight. And there was parts of me that at first I loved it. And then after a while, I'm like, man, I'm still the same person. Like I didn't deserve to be treated like crap and made fun of and all this stuff. And then I kind of started resenting of like, if you don't love me at like my lowest or when I first wake up in the morning or whatever I'm coming to the table with, then like you
Yeah,
don't deserve me at my best either. Like this is just it's ridiculous that we are so judgmental of people.
I
So I
think
think
that.
that's yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I think that really it didn't set into me of like how important this was until I had lost the weight though. It was definitely an afterthought because I thought that it was going to solve all the things.
Yeah, I remember right after I lost 180 pounds in 2004, and all these people were like talking to me that never said a word to me. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, isn't that ironic that at our biggest, we're the most invisible, and at our smallest, now we're suddenly large and in charge, and you want to talk to us? I did the same thing that you did. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. Oh, this is, oh, oh. Like when you really think about what that represents, that I'm
Yeah.
not being talked to until I look normal enough to them to talk. Oh my gosh, like I know that preaches to a lot of people because you go on this journey, and a lot of people go off the rails at that point because they're not comfortable in the smaller size. They want to go back to the bigger size because at least they were in an area where they knew what that was. Their brain can't comprehend this new version of them.
Yeah, and I think the other tricky part, which you and I have talked about extensively, is body dysmorphia is so real and brutal, because I actually look back in my phone now of pictures when I was like at my absolute thinnest. And I look at pictures that I wouldn't post because I was like, oh, I look fat in this picture. I'm not going to post this picture. And I look back now, I'm like, I was emaciated looking. Like I had lost so much weight, especially like after my skin removal surgery.
Yeah.
That was a brutal recovery. And like, I was like, I got down really, really low at that point, probably lower than I wanted to be. And I still was like, I couldn't see it. Like, even though it was right in front of my face, I couldn't see it.
And that's the thing. Like, I think sometimes, and you and I both have talked about this, you make such a fast transformation. Mine was 1 year, lost the 180. How long? 2 years, right, for your 120
Yeah,
something?
I can't. That is like mind blowing that you lost that amount. I lost 100 pounds in a year, and then the last 20 pounds was like awful. Like it's like that's when I really started to kind of understand those people who are like, I really need to lose 20 pounds, because before that point, I was like, don't, like, please do not say that around me. Like, that's ridiculous. But that last 20 pounds took me some more time. I think it was like between 3 and 6 months.
And that probably helped you, that you got to a certain point and you weren't quite done, kind of methodically made you, so maybe somewhat that brain transition. But you're right, like 180 in 1 year, I was
That's insane.
just go. And I did things, throughout, knowing that I'm like, I want to hit a goal. I had this goal, 230 pounds, 230 pounds. And I wasn't going to stop till I hit it. Like, I'm very stubborn that way. But this obsession about it, which when I got on the other side of it and started kind of living La Vida low carb and all the things I do, I wasn't here yet. And not even like seeing myself as obese still, but just I wasn't ready for everything that was happening. I'm glad that things that were happening, because I had a creative outlet. I love to write. And then eventually behind this microphone and this podcast. But it's like, I almost wish I had taken 3 to 4 years to lose the same amount of weight.
Yeah, it's funny though, because when you struggle with your weight your whole life, and then you finally get that spark of like, okay, I'm actually really doing it this time. I'm not just saying it. And you start to see the results. You get so obsessed with like, all right, I'm killing it. I just need to like keep moving forward, because if I stop or I slow down, I'm going to give up like I did all these other times. And you literally become obsessed with the process. Like I often tell Mick, when I look back, like at my strictest of doing keto, I just replaced one addiction for the other. Like I got so obsessed with losing weight that was like all I talked about, all I thought about. And so then I had to realize, like, which is what sparked writing Beyond Simply Keto, was like, I had to kind of look myself in the mirror and be like, okay, you were obsessed with food before, and now you're obsessed with food in a different way, and losing weight and being thin, and, all these things that you kind of dreamed all that would bring. And I really had to like get into some counseling and start working on like the core issues of like what actually got me here to begin with.
And kudos to you for recognizing you needed the therapy help. I never got that about 2 years ago when I started working on all this stuff myself. Hired a life coach who is a licensed therapist, and she started working through these things. And it's more than just like your relationship to food. It's your relationships in life, the people you surround yourself with. Like, I don't think we give enough credence, and which is why I love that you're here today, and we're the best of friends, so it's fun to talk to you. And I love all that I'm learning about what matters in life now, because used to losing weight, getting my health in order, having a successful career, 2 dogs, 2 kids, and a wife, it was the meaning of life. And it's like, I realized there's things that for me matter a lot, and I ignored, and I never saw before. I never put the value on before. Have you had any epiphanies like that as well?
Yeah, I think one of the things, like, that whole concept of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. And one of the things that I kind of thought about after this whole process is like, I mean, I know to some degree I have metabolic damage, and, I definitely don't do well with like eating carbs. So I know there's like a whole metabolic element. But from like a mental health perspective, I think about like my weight as kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. Like super depressed, low self-esteem, lots of really troubling things going on at home, no stability feeling, like, all those things kind of led to me eating. And when you really stop and look, a lot of people focus so much on the diet and so much on what they're eating, but they're not paying attention to like am I happy with like my life, the people in my life? Do I have toxic relationships? Like, you know, we focus so much on the food. So when I really got to stop and like look and go through counseling and dig up all these moments in time where I built this belief of myself that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't going to be successful, that I couldn't do anything, that I didn't fit in. You know, when you make your purpose seeking out that you're not good enough, you're going to find it. And that's what I did. So I had to learn to seek the positive, seek the opportunity, like seek the ability to just kind of elevate and get out of my own way and do the things that I wanted to do.
And see, you've been extremely successful at a lot of the things you want to do. Guys, she's a big deal. She's a big deal. I can always say I knew Suzanne Ryan when, because you picked me up at an airport where I was on the way to a speaking tour in Australia, and you were kind of enamored fangirl of me bad. We were just jibber jabbering, and I knew hearing you talk that you were going to see success. But then the success came, and I recently had on our mutual friend Leanne Vogel talking about the success for her, because she also saw it in a big way. It kind of overwhelmed her. How did you mitigate it so it didn't overwhelm you?
I think the thing for me is that it was overwhelming. Like there was lots of things that were very scary to me. I remember talking to you even before going on the TV shows, and you're like, all right, girl, you can do this. Like I was really fortunate to have a lot of people who were in my corner and who were really just like positively reinforcing and saying like, you can do this. Like when I would have those doubts jump in my head, I would hop on a call with my friends. Mick was super supportive. So I had this like really great foundation of support. But I think the other thing too is like when you do something scary and then you get through it, it's kind of like you kind of like lose that fear of doing the next thing a little bit more. And then you gain a little bit of confidence of like, yes, this is scary. And that fear doesn't mean that I shouldn't do it. It means that I can acknowledge it. It's a little scary, but I'm going to do it and I'm going to get through it. So I just had to kind of like little by little grasp of like, yeah, I'm going to be scared, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Is it weird? And we're going to do a little inside baseball of being a author. So is it weird the first time you go to like a Williams-Sonoma store and they got you all set up with this nice little, you know, backdrop, and it's just beautiful and all these people wanting to meet you? Are you still weird about signing your name in your book? And you want a picture with me? What? Yeah. It's like yourself in that way.
I think, you know, for me, it's like I love people and I love connecting and I love the one-on-one, but I've never been a big fan of being the center of attention or like, up. I'm always kind of like, I was always the one in the corner kind of thing. Like, and it's funny because in some ways I'm an extrovert, in some ways I'm an introvert. So for me, like doing tours is like a little intimidating, but I just go and do it because I love connecting with people. And I think after being online so much, like you really just need to be able to get out and hug people and like see the impact that you're making, because the reality is like our work is really hard. It's really time consuming. It can be really stressful, and like the online social media world can be really brutal. So sometimes you just need to get out and see and hug those people that you're helping to kind of remind yourself of why you do what you do.
I remember when Maria and I wrote the ketogenic cookbook, it took off in Canada, and so our publisher wanted to send Maria to Canada to do a 3 or 4 city book tour, and she said, "No, Jimmy can do it. No." And like now, look at her. She's got her own TV. She's traveling around the world. She's a fireball, and so sometimes you have to step out of that fear and into what you were meant to be. And I think that's what happened for you. Like you had that fear, that trepidatiousness. I'm that introvert over in the corner. Yeah. I when you have those things, and I think Maria, it applies to her, and it definitely applied to me, although I overcame it pretty quick. You have a trauma response with that kind of going internally. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm imposter syndrome. Da 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 da. I know Leanne said the same thing on my show, that she didn't feel qualified, didn't feel adequate, and that starts to work on you mentally as well.
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome, I think, is something that everyone experiences. Like, no matter what job you do, I think one of the things is that we build up all these beliefs about what people in these positions must be like. And I think in some ways it relates to how much we like make people celebrities, and we put them on these pedestals that like they're above us and they're better than us, and they must have like everything together and they must be so polished and like never mess up. And so then we kind of like take ourselves off of the ability of being able to level, like be on that level. But then the cool thing is like when you get to meet the people who are your heroes and then meet the people who are making impacts that you want to make, and you get to see that they're just real people who make mistakes, who will often be like, I don't even know what I'm doing, but I'm just showing up. It really does give you that like to say like, all right, like these are just normal people. And if you want to make an impact and you have a passion, like go for it, you know?
Newsflash, Jimmy Moore, Suzanne, Leanne Vogel, Maria Emmer, all the people we've been talking about today, we're just people. We're just people. And for that matter, the guys in Maroon 5.
Everybody.
All these famous people, they're just people. Like, you're right. We have kind of this cult of personality that kicks in, and people, and they do it to us all the time. You and I just recently joined Clubhouse, and I'm kind of simulcasting over here on my Clubhouse room. People, I love it because they get to see the real person behind us. And so, why do you think people want that kind of put people up on a pedestal? I know it's kind of culturally normed to put them up on a pedestal so you can kick them off and then watch them try to get back up on it again. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, I don't really know. I think the interesting thing for, I think a lot of people, like a lot of the people that I resonate the most with, like you and a lot of other people in the keto space, like the OG people, I think I resonate the most with people who got into this because of a passion and a purpose. And then they like accidentally, like, I mean, not that you didn't put in a ton of work, but then like the following and the career things and like all the really cool opportunities came after because you put your heart into something first, versus the people who are like, I want to be famous. I want to be an influencer. I want to like, it's, if you focus on the business aspect right off the bat, to me, it's like, it's a turn off to me, because I think if you follow the passion and you turn your pain into purpose and you really are out there trying to make a difference, like the rest of that stuff will come, but you have to be genuine and have ethics and like put your heart out there.
Yeah. When I started living La Vida Low Carb in 2005, it's just a blog. I wasn't trying to do business, nothing. And a year later, when I started my podcast, I really wasn't trying to go, I'm going to build an empire around my brand.
Right.
I have a lot of stuff to say and different ways to say it. And so, but then at some point you had companies from an ethical standpoint, some of them not so nice, but some of them pretty good, and wanted to work with you, and you kind of go, well, wait a minute, you want to pay me to wait, what? And you've had those opportunities where companies want to pay you to do things. And, it's all good if it resonates with you, if it's a company you vibe with. You should see all the ones I turned down. I probably turned down 95% of what's pitched to me.
100%.
Podcast, they're the few, the proud that got through the screening vetting process.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I love this whole concept of being just as proud of the things that you say no to as the things you say yes to. And I think if you do, again, ethics is like at the core of everything that I do. So like, I have absolutely no problem turning down companies who don't resonate with me, who do predatory marketing, who do all those things that I'm like, nope. Like, when you're not in it for the money, it's really easy to do those things.
Well, and I think that's some of the most successful people in business, ironically, are the ones that don't put the focus on the money. I help people now, because I've been at this so long, people are like, can you help me with my business? Help me like come up with a brand and do that. And if I'm in the early time and they're already talking about, so when am I going to make money? So when am I going to be famous? I'm like, get out now. Get out. That's your motivation. You're not going to succeed because that's all you're going to put your eye on the whole time. And if you put your eye on the people, which is always, even to this day, I care about people. I look at the people I talk to on Clubhouse. Every time I do a podcast, there's people on YouTube, people on my podcast list. And I'm talking to them, like directly to them. And I don't care if I make money off of them or not. It's not about that for me. Do I make money? Sure. And I'm happy about that. And I'm glad about that. It pays the bills and lets me keep doing more free stuff for you guys. So same for you. But even for you, you've taken like your success and you've been extremely successful as well. And you've used that as seed money to create a business now. You've got this Defy Foods company. You want to tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, after writing the cookbooks and everything, I started testing around with some like cracker recipes and different things because I'm sure you know too, Jimmy. Like we're just missing like crunchy things in the keto space. And like I get so burned out on pork rinds and things like that. So my best friend and I lived in the same condo complex in California, and we would have family dinners at each other's houses, and we would make recipes and stuff. And we both have girls who are the same age. And so we started making crackers because we always made all these really cool dips, and we're just kind of burnt out on like just doing celery or pork rinds. So we started making these keto crackers at home, and our girls were like obsessed with them. So we would make them in batches and pack them in their lunches. And then we would eat them all the time and we loved them. But we're like, it is such a pain in the butt to make. Like you have to make the dough, roll it out super thin, slice it up. Like it's just tedious. So we kind of kicked around with my best friend, and I was like, should we like actually like sell these and like put them into the market? Because if we're missing them and we're wanting them, and I wish that I could buy them, I feel like the best ideas stem from things that you see in your own life are missing.
Yeah.
So we're like, we kicked it around for a while, and then finally, like, we're like, oh, let's talk about a name. And that's when like the whole thing of Defy came in, because we're like, you know what? At the center of this, we want to be very mission driven of like defying the odds, defying the norms, the expectations, both in like the food industry and in life itself, because like we've all overcome so much to get here. So it took us 2 years, and we finally just launched, and we have the keto crackers, and they're so delicious. And it's just nice to be able to really make an impact on the food industry, because the food industry is definitely starting to notice that people are demanding change, which I'm super excited about. And I actually remember when I met you, you were going and like lobbying for the changes in the guidelines and everything. So it's just been great to see that change in the food space.
As you were describing your cracker, I'm heavy into it fast right now. I growled when you're like,
Oh,
hey,
I know. I know. When are you done with your fast? I'll have to send you some.
well, you can send me some and I'll have
You'll
them
have
for,
one.
but and thank you for that, by the way. Go get them, guys. Was it defyfoods.com?
Yeah, it's defyfoods.com. And we actually just sold out of the 12 pack. So we have the 3 and the 6-pack left. And so we are going to, we're doing another run coming up. So we're going to be restocking, but the response has been incredible. And we're super thankful for all the support, because, as two women co-founders, like in the new world of the food space, it is very complicated, it is very complex. And then also we're doing small batch with really quality ingredients. So there's a lot of things that we're juggling to do, but at the core of this, we wanted something that tasted good, but that was also like really, really had good ingredients. So they're ketogenic certified from Dr. Ryan Lowry and his team at ketogenic.com. So, we really wanted at the core of this, because how many products have you gotten that it's like the ingredients are garbage? So it doesn't matter if they taste good or not, you're not going to eat them. Or you'll have stuff that has great ingredients, but it tastes awful, so you're not going to eat that either. So we wanted to bridge the gap there.
I just love watching you develop from when nothing other than you were doing your videos, and that was something. I'm not trying to discount it, but
Yeah.
now international best-selling author, and now burgeoning businesswoman with this company. What's it feel like to be an entrepreneur? Does that feel weird to you at all?
I mean, yes and no. I've always been like a go-getter in the sense of why, like, it's kind of like a why not me thing. Like my dad always raised me to be like very independent and to take things on, on my own. Like when I was younger, he taught me how to change my own oil and to, put the wheels on the car if you get a flat tire. I mean, so he definitely raised me to kind of just be very independent and always looking for like what I could do. But I never really, I don't know, it's an interesting thing though, because before I used to see all this like greatness and possibility in other people. And I think after writing a book and kind of stepping into my own a little bit, I'm like, okay, like the next thing's not going to be as scary. It's kind of like what we talked about with like just overcoming things in general. I think it just really gave me that confidence to say like, what's the worst that can happen? Like that's what we really had to ask ourselves, instead of like, oh, well, what if this happens and what if this happens? It's like, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is like it doesn't work out, but at least you tried. I didn't want to turn around and be like, oh gosh, I regret that I didn't try this, because I had many years of my life where I did live on the sidelines and I didn't step up, and I didn't want to live like that anymore.
You certainly are willing to take a lot more risks than you might have pre weight loss for you, pre bestseller for you. Like today, I feel like I've earned the right to say something bluntly online if I want to. And I hold back. It's like, are we going to say, as long as it's not weird, and it's not. Well, maybe it is weird to some people, but it's from my heart, and I feel like it needs to get out there. Whereas others would be like, oh, I don't want to say anything about some company that's doing shady things because I want to protect my image and they'll come after me and da-da-da. I'm like, come at me, bruh. Like, literally.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you do kind of develop a little bit of a thicker skin. I mean, I still have days where I'm like super sensitive to comments and feedback and things like that. And I have to recenter myself. I love this whole idea of like in the arena, if someone's not in the arena, if they're not being brave with their life, if they're not putting themselves out there in the same way, then their feedback really shouldn't be taken in the same way. So, it's easy for keyboard warriors to sit there and tear you apart. And honestly, like, you have to really look at those people with sympathy, because they got to be going through something bad or really struggling with their own self-worth or something to go and tear someone down that they don't even know.
Yeah. So you and I kind of rode this keto wave, and it's on the way out. We had a good time with it, and you've been at it almost as long as I have, because your journey what was the year? 15. Okay. So 2015, you went on your journey, you lost your weight, and then you started writing books just like me and Leanne Vogel and Marie Emmerich and all the rest of us. And we've had a big wave, and now it's on the decline. What next? Like, at this point, people are like, okay, we're still going to eat keto. It's not like keto's going away, but as a trend, it's going away. What's kind of next? Because a lot of us, you and me included, and many other people that talk to me privately go, I don't really want to talk about keto so much. I want to talk about like the mindset and childhood trauma, all these other things. Why do you think all of us are drawn to that particular subject all at the same time?
I think it's because of the fact that you do kind of get fascinated with like the thing that the tool, like it's like the new tool in the tool belt that you develop in life. So like keto was like that thing that everyone's like, oh my gosh, like this big realization of eating low fat isn't the answer. Eating low carb is the answer. And I think like we were all so inundated with that and spreading the word and wanting to make it mainstream. And when that happened, that was great. And I feel like, keto is here to stay. I don't think keto is going anywhere. Now, is it going to have the level of hype that it did when it was first, blowing up? No. But I think we'll all remain super passionate about the subject of keto. But I think after a while, you just kind of get tired of talking about like the same thing and answer the same, like what are net carbs? What, like the basic things, you just kind of get worn out of talking about over and over. But I think the shift also comes from the sense that when you realize what we talked about earlier, that losing weight and just focusing on your diet is not the full picture, then all that stuff comes to the surface of mental health, mindset, low self-esteem, never feeling good enough, all these things that you're like, oh, all this stuff's like really important, and dare I say more important, So I think we've all kind of realized that as we've gone through our journeys.
It's kind of like dissecting, how did we get into the situation where we needed a keto diet to begin with?
Yeah.
You want to go back. So did you have trauma in your childhood? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
Yeah, so I had kind of an interesting childhood. My parents were divorced when I was in the second grade, and it was a very nasty divorce. And we were definitely in the cross arrows of like them talking bad about each other, going back and forth every weekend between each other's the houses. And then my mom deals with some like mental illness and panic disorder. And so she was going through a lot of different things at the time. So we ended up moving in with my dad, and my dad was taking care of us full time, and he didn't have any money, and he was just making it as best as he could. So we lived in like breezeways of people's houses and garages that were converted into apartments, and like we were definitely struggling a lot. And I think just like never really feeling settled, and lots of conflict in our families. We were always in counseling as kids, just, going back and forth. My mom always put us in counseling. So we were, I just feel like from the beginning, we were constantly struggling with like that self-worth. Is this my fault? Things like that. And then as I got older, I had like some more kind of traumatic things happen in our family. And I just felt like it was always something. There was never like this settled foundation feeling.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And about my story, getting beat as a teenager, and then it just sends you in a tailspin. Like I tell people, trauma begets more trauma begets more trauma until you can somehow break that cycle. What broke the cycle?
I feel like in general, when I had Olivia, I realized that I needed to get healthy on multiple levels because I didn't want to repeat the cycle.
Olivia.
What's that?
Olivia is your daughter.
Yeah, sorry. I'm like assuming.
Talking to me, but you're talking to everybody. Olivia's her daughter. How old is she now?
She just turned 8.
8 years old.
8 years old. So, I think that like having her definitely put things into perspective for me. And I wanted to be a good example for her, and I wanted to be around for her. And then I didn't want to repeat that cycle of everything that I felt and like the things that were put into my head. And one of the things that I really noticed is, and I don't know if other people feel this way, but when I really look back at like the generation of women in my family, my grandmother was a model, and she was like very much into like aesthetics, and everything was about the way she looked. And when she raised my mom, she was very critical of my mom and her looks, and everything was very focused on that. And I remember growing up, like, it's kind of like it makes its way down through the generations. And I remember even my grandmother saying to me after I got married to Mick, like, make sure you like do your hair and your makeup, and make sure like you have everything nice and neat and stuff when Mick gets home from work. And it's just crazy to me to look back and see how much of an emphasis our physical selves was like big then. It was like, that's how you got a husband. That's how you, maintain this look of like you were doing better than your neighbors. And like, I can kind of see that it got passed down little by little, because my mom is like insanely critical of herself. I mean, I've literally gone to dressing rooms with her and heard her look in the mirror and say, oh God, like I look disgusting in this. And when we're describing ourselves like that, and when you're young and you grow up, you learn like, you look in the mirror and you're critical, and you see that passed down. So I really had this mission with raising Olivia not to be critical. And it's hard because so many of us, our inner voice is so critical and so negative, and we're always looking for something to try to dial in,
Well, and for you got it hardwired from your own mom. This is what you woman. This is the expectation you should have on yourself as a woman. I'm talking to a friend right now, and she's the exact same way. She's got a 10-year-old girl, and she's just, I gained 15 pounds, and oh my God, it's so ugly. Oh, and I'm on video. I do have a double chin. I'm just like, what? Like, you get deep into the crevice of why you believe these kind of things, and you kind of go, why do I believe those things? Like, you recognize bad pattern in your mom, and you're trying to do better for your daughter, even though it still hurts. You're still like fighting that. Oh my gosh, I want to say something bad about Suzanne, but you can't because you have a bigger picture with this little one. But this one, she also has a little one about the same age as Olivia, and she fights it all the time. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is interesting when you can really come face to face with seeing like we're only like 2 or 3 generations off from a lot of women's like value and purpose being centered around like how they looked. Like, I mean, that was literally the core, like that was what my grandmother was so obsessed with, that because that was like how she got like a certain husband. And like, I mean, even when you watch like these older shows of how people were, it's like, how do you look and what does your dress look like and how tight is your corset? So it's like there's all these generational patterns that we're having to overcome. And you hope that generation by generation, you just continue to get better. But then the other beautiful thing that comes from that is you're able to look back, and instead of resenting my mom for that, I actually feel empathy and compassion for her. That like, God, can you imagine what she went through growing up? Like having a super, super critical mom. Like at least she was aware, raising me, of like, I had this critical thing, but maybe she was a little bit better than what her mom was to her. So like, it gives you that great perspective to look back with empathy instead of being like the victim of everything.
I had to do the same thing with my dad because I never understood why he was so abusive to me physically and emotionally until I found I had an alcoholic father that drank alcohol and was emotionally and physically abusive to him.
Yeah.
So when my dad came on the scene in my life and had kids, he's like, oh, I'm going to be better than my dad. I don't drink alcohol. I'm a police officer. I'm an upstanding member of the business community. Da, 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 da. So in his mind, he did better. And I suppose it's the difference between filtered cigarettes and unfiltered cigarettes. They're both bad, but he was the filtered that it was a little bit better. So therefore it was good.
Yeah. I think that's all we can hope is that like with each generation, we get more aware and more open. And what I really love now is that like we all are starting to really normalize mental health, seeking help. Everyone, men, women, like being strong is being vulnerable. It's not trying to act like everything's fine. It's not the whole term of like man up. It's like, let's talk about the things that are bothering you. Let's talk about, how you feel about things, what happened in your past. Like being vulnerable is being strong. And I think having that shift is going to open up so much healing for so many people.
Oh, but so many people, Suzanne, still resist it because it's so comfortable to stay where you are, stay in your misery, stay in the lemmingness of the world. I'm tired of being a world. I want to be that shining shooting star that makes changes happen. And you and I both have. You and I both have books and influence people. We get emails every single day. Oh my God, you changed my life. And so it's amazing when you get that. But other people, they're just like, they're not willing to put in that work that will make themselves vulnerable, make themselves maybe a sitting duck for potential criticism, that it keeps them stuck in their muckety muck. And then their whole life they wonder, why didn't I ever do anything? Why didn't I ever go anywhere? Why didn't any things ever happen? You gotta break loose those shackles that have held you down.
Yeah, I mean, being vulnerable is scary. That's why it is easy, like you said. It's easier to sit on the sidelines and just like tear other people apart or to stay stuck in what you are. But I think the complex thing is, I think you and I can both, we've been through this, is like when you're in it, it feels like that's the more comfortable space, but it's actually not. Like it's actually, when I look back now and I think, man, what I thought was my comfort zone, I was miserable. Like I was absolutely miserable. So it's like the uncomfortable comfort spot. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not really living. Like living is when you can really be who you are, show up and say like, hey, this is me, and I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to do things that I care about. And I think if you put that foot forward, that's the best to be.
I remember when I got out of college, I always felt like every job I was in, I was destined to do more. It was just that pull within what I now know. Spirit was trying to like scream, dude, go do your own thing. But I always felt like I had so much more to give, but they couldn't see it. It was like, hello, hello, and I couldn't get anybody's attention. And I knew my own value even at that point, even as other people didn't. And so that's what made me take the plunge eventually to go out on my own 16, 17 years ago to just give this a go. And I'm glad I did, by the way. So if you're ever like on that edge and you feel that heart's pull, you guys go, like take that plunge. That had to be scary for you when you decided to go full time. And then your husband also joined your business, and that had to be kind of scary. Oh my gosh, we're doing all this on our own now. Are we going to do this? And how would it like for
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has like its highs and lows. And I think ultimately I struggled for a long time with looking at anything in the keto space as being like more business related, because for me, it was like such a passionate topic and I just wanted to like so badly to help people. And I wasn't thinking about any like business motives at all. So when you actually do have to make this shift of like, I hit this crossroads of, I was an ultrasound tech before I do what I do now. So it's like, I either need to like go back and be an ultrasound tech and have that be my career, and I'm not going to have time to do all the things that I love doing in this space, or I can do this, monetize in an ethical way, keep doing these things that I love and really make an impact that like to me really it fills my cup. Like I really feel like I'm making a difference. So I had to kind of overcome these like little judgments that I had built in that I didn't even know where they came from. I don't know. I'm still kind of unpacking all of that, but I think it was just that like I hated so much the idea of like the weight loss industry. And so I kind of wanted to form something that was like the anti weight loss industry, of empowering people to know that they don't need to be reliant on products or programs or like all of these things that we're bought and sold all the time. And we're always looking out for something outside of ourselves to fix whatever it is we're struggling with. So, moving over to that was definitely scary. But again, I think this is like one of the most important things is I think sometimes people look at fear as a response of this means that I shouldn't do something, but that's actually not true. That's like, hey, this is a normal part of entrepreneurship, of doing something that's new. It's going to be scary when you're making your own path, but that's not proof that you shouldn't do it. In fact, it's proof that you should.
I often tell the story about 2009. It was right after the stock market kind of went crazy in 2008, and we were really depressed kind of economy at that point. All the sponsors that used to send me money went away. They were like, nope, we don't know what's going on. Kind of like right now, a lot of the sponsors are like, yeah, we don't know what we're doing. So I didn't make any money, and I didn't have books at the time. So I didn't make any money for about 9 or 10 months in a row. And it got to the point where, okay, this passion project was fun while it lasted. I did okay, but I guess I'm going to have to shut it down. I said, but before I do, let me strip everything down to the bare nakedness. So cut off cell phones, cut off cable, basically existed on eggs, like everything. Because I was like, I'm not letting this die without a fight.
Right.
And 1 year of that, they started coming back, and I started making money again and be able to pay my bills. And then 2 years later, I get a call from the publisher, hey, you want to write books? And then became a huge bestseller. So I tell people you should be thankful I didn't give up in 2009, because there would have been no Keto Clarity. There would have been no Keto Talk. There would have been this podcast would have ended because I wouldn't have had time to do it. It's so funny, like when you look back in those moments, then when things could have just like crashed and burned, and then you look at where you are today and go, oh, thank God I persevered.
Yeah, I mean, almost every like big success story, both in people and companies that I really resonate with, there's like always this common thread when they're really vulnerable and they're talking about the process of a moment where it almost all ended, or a moment where they almost didn't do this big pivotal thing, and then they did, and it changed the entire outcome. So I think that's just kind of an interesting thing. Ryan Lowry actually said to me the other day something that like really resonated with me about you learn more from being like on the bottom than you do from the mountaintops. And I think, I don't know exactly how he worded it, but it's so true. It's like when you really hit that rock bottom, it really kind of gives you in this really interesting place of like, what really matters? Like, what's my purpose? Like, what do I care the most about? And then like, how do I just wake up every day and build something, knowing that like there's going to be hard times and there's going to be setbacks and there's going to be days where I'm so burned out. But like, if you're really deeply into that passion, like you're going to find a way.
What I love about being rock bottom is when you reach high, it's that much further high. Like people that say, well, I just want to be happy all the time and be content all the time. I'm like, how do you ever know this is the goal? But when you're down here, whoa, it's just like you feel that. And then that propels you to go, okay. And times rocky, it's okay to stay kind of chill because it's going to be all right.
Yeah. It's like the sweet and the sour, you have to have the light and the dark. It makes you appreciate the other. So I think it's really important to embrace both of those and not look at those setbacks and those bottom outs of proof that you don't belong or that you're not good enough. It's just like part of the human experience.
And now you have me thinking about sweet and sour chicken.
Oh, no.
So I have a sweet and sour chicken recipe. Can you make that?
Yeah, I think actually, speaking of Maria, I think Maria has one that I just saw that looked really good. I don't have one, but I think Maria has one. She's like the master chef.
Yeah. Got those boys she's been cooking little food things for years. Do you get inspiration from Olivia, or is it just in general you're like, this is what I would want to eat?
She's definitely like my favorite little food critic because she will tell me what's up. Like I can give Mick like all kinds of stuff, and 9 times out of 10, he's like, "This is amazing. This is delicious." But Olivia will be like, "Mom, no. Like you need to try this recipe again." So it's really fun, especially because kids are just so brutally honest, and I love that about her. She'll just be like, "Hey," but it does inspire you to say if she'll say like, "Hey, I really want pancakes for breakfast." Then I really took the time to dial them into something that she would eat because you have to pass like the kid test for all the recipes that go in my book. Now there's a couple that she like just doesn't like certain vegetables that I'm just working on her with that. But yeah, it's definitely fun having a kid. And I've been really focusing on getting her in the kitchen with me more than anything so that she can know what it's like to cook. Because I didn't grow up cooking. And I think that having those basic skills are really helpful to like make your own food. So I've just been kind of enjoying having her in the kitchen with me.
That's what I love about Maria with her boys. They're in there
Yeah.
with her, hands on the food, everything. Yeah, when I was growing up in the 80s, as a kid in the 80s, Mama would have hamburger helper, can of,
Mm-hmm.
can of green beans, and Grand's biscuits. That was every night. And so
Southern
for a while,
comfort.
yes. So when Mama dinner, it was an easy dinner to make. But I was
Yeah.
like 8, 9 years old making that dinner and setting the table. I was even then like, I need affirmation. I need praise. Please praise me for something. And so I'm still that way, sadly. Yeah.
Well,
I,
everybody is.
what you say?
I said everybody is. We all want to feel like valued and,
Yeah.
appreciated and yeah.
Yes. So we do have a few people over here on the Keto Clarity Clubhouse. So if you want to talk to me and my lovely friend Suzanne Ryan, we'd love to have you raise your hand, come up on the stage. Don't be shy, you guys. So it does look like we have somebody who wants to talk to us here. It looks like Dawn. So Dawn, as soon as you come up to the stage, just go ahead and unmic mic yourself and then talk.
Hello.
Hey, hey, hey.
Speaking my language.
Speaking your language, yes.
Yeah, you're talking about past traumas and about upbringing, and it's funny how we all get to this place with our own little journeys. And you had asked Suzanne whether that was what, I think you said that, whether that was what took her to keto, like from past experiences and stuff, trauma and stuff like that. And I think that in my case, the keto cleared everything else away so that I didn't realize how really messed up my thinking. I don't like to say messed up because that's a negative term, and I'm trying to change all my terms in my head. But no, I think that that lifted away all the fog, kind of, and it was something I think that I could control. Like I had so little control over anything in my life, and going through. I'm doing therapy now. Well, I've always been doing therapy of some sort, but I did the head therapy for so long, and I mean, I think you can only do that for so long.
Yeah.
Until now, I'm into the body aspect of it, and it's pretty amazing. Like the survival, it's pretty amazing learning about it all. It's like in what we do to survive, really. And I'm learning about parts now, and I'm not sure if you guys have come across any of that in trauma healing and stuff like that, and how I've created so many parts within myself to protect myself, and it's pretty amazing some of the stuff. My daughter kind of got me on this because she is a life coach, but realized with her own traumas that, like she risked re-traumatizing others. So she's working on her own stuff now. And we do really only know, like Jimmy, you talked about your dad, like it was better than his dad was.
Yep.
He did better, like maybe, to a degree. And I think it's the same, I vowed that I would not be my mother to my kids. And I wasn't, but I still, because I was missing so many parts of that, self-regulation and all of that, I couldn't pass any of that on to my kids. So,
Right.
So it's a heck of a journey, and yeah, like, well, that's really all I've got to say, other than this is a super good topic. Awesome topic.
Thank you, Dawn. Suzanne, any comments?
Yeah, actually, when I went to counseling, Dawn, one of the things my therapist told me was, when we go through these traumatic experiences in our life, and especially when we're at a younger age, we process them and we kind of make assumptions, or we have takeaways that we carry with us throughout our lives that were formed at this like really young age. So it's like, for example, like when Jimmy was going through his trauma at a younger age, you're not old enough to see like, hey, I didn't deserve this. This wasn't my fault. This has nothing to do with my worth. But because you experienced that when you were so young, you think all these things of, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I deserve this. Maybe I, did something wrong, or maybe I'm not good enough. And you carry that stuff. So it's so important to unpack it and to go to counseling and to kind of revisit those moments as an adult with more clarity and more understanding, and say like, no, we're going to rewrite this story. I didn't deserve to be treated this way. This had nothing to do with me. The people in my life who did this thing, like, they were the ones that had issues going on. And you can really kind of release yourself from that feeling of, gosh, like this one moment held me back my whole life, because it formed this belief in myself that I wasn't good enough, or that I didn't, I wasn't deserving of things, or that this idea that I formed when I was too young to understand can now be released. So I think this is why counseling is so important.
Yes. Well, Dawn, thank you for that. Wendy is the next one. You want to tell us what's on your mind? Wendy, you're up.
Oh, sorry, my
you're on
microphone.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so this is really interesting, and I always feel like I had such a great childhood, but my parents were both dancers, right? And growing up in that atmosphere was, they never made me like feel like I was fat or anything, but it was always like, oh, dancers are thin, and if you want to be a dancer, and I grew up, like dancing before I could walk practically, so it was almost a given that, well, that's what you do, you dance. And I was not, like a reed thin kid, and I felt like that's what they were telling me that I should be. And they were the most loving, wonderful parents, but there was this undercurrent of, you can't ever be too thin. And I think, weirdly, mine was a reaction of, well, I'm me. I might not want to do this. I want to do my own, whatever I'm supposed to do, rather than what my parents have done their whole life. And I think my reaction was like, okay, I want to be my own person, so I'm going to like just raid the Oreos, rather than follow in that line. So it's interesting how childhood sort of experiences inform this more than what you would think. Like when I would hear, abusive parents, I would say, well, that's not me. So why did I get fat? I don't know. And trying to figure that out has been a whole other journey for me, because I didn't have something that I could point to and say, oh, they were terrible. My parents stayed married their entire lives. They, my sister and I, we were all very close family. So I was really at a loss, like, okay, what is my excuse? And I think that was one that came to me very much later. It's kind of like I was rebelling. That was my rebellion. Mm-hmm. So it sometimes takes different forms than what you think it does.
In some ways,
I think.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, Jimmy.
Go ahead, Wendy.
I was just going to say, I think like being on keto has somehow given me the clarity to start seeing that. So
yes.
The whole thing is really interesting.
In some ways, Suzanne, thank you, Wendy. In some ways, Suzanne, I'm really glad. It sounds so weird to say this out loud, but I'm really glad I got beat as a teenager. Because had I not, I wouldn't appreciate how I was able to come back from that. And I know you can say the same thing about your own resiliency and how you live your life and what it took that got you to that point of being at your highest and your saddest and your most invisible, as we were talking about earlier, to now being this beautiful, shining example of exuberance for life. Like, and I have the same thing. I'm not beautiful. I'm just kidding. I'm very
You are, Jimmy. Come on.
A girl didn't tell me, so thank you for boosting my ego. So, yeah, but I'm at the point where it's had it not been for some of those things and you went through things yourself, could you be where you are today?
No, and I think that's where you really get to look back and really appreciate the outcome of the lessons and the level of empathy and compassion and purpose that you can take that pain and really move it forward to help other people and to, I don't know, I think there's something that's so healing about being able to take something that was so bad and turn it into something beautiful and positive and to overcome and to have that perseverance and to know, to really know what compassion stems from, like to be able to, like, to not want other people to experience the way that you felt or to want to lift other people up because you know how bad it felt to be at that low. Like, I think you're right. Like, I think the most beautiful people are the people who have suffered some really horrendous things because they come out with this beauty that I don't know if they would have had before.
You know what I started doing when I noticed this about myself was I'm like, all right, I want to do research on every like successful person.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they had to overcome something traumatic. And it's like, is that the key to success? I hope not. I mean, I hope that you would think like somebody grows up in a happy home, they go to a good college, they get a good parenting job, and that's the key to success, but it never was.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I look back and I think one of my most difficult struggles was when I was like fresh out of college. I went through this like really traumatic experience of like losing two really core people in my life. And I was so depressed that I was suicidal. I didn't want to live anymore. I felt like I had no purpose. I was just like, it was like a rock bottom moment for me. And I still even like have a hard time like telling the story of that. And that's why I kind of tiptoe around it a little bit in Beyond Simply Keto, because in such a public space, it's hard to tell like all these details while protecting the people in the story. But I think that there is just like a moment where I can really look and see like, this is actually the moment that I was like, I have to get up and rewrite my own story. Like, I have to fight for what I believe in. I have to, and it wasn't like a sudden thing. Like I was down in the dumps for months. Like I was super depressed. I was struggling again for like the purpose of living. But once I got past that, I was like, this is my time to rewrite my story. And like, I'll be damned if I'm not going to do it. And it does give you kind of this like fighting will to like overcome and to really turn that into purpose.
Man, this has been a great conversation. Again, it's easy with a friend, and you've been a longtime friend, a very supportive friend, and thank you for that, by the way.
Of course, thank you. You've been an amazing friend to me as well.
Thank you. Guys, go check her out. That is Suzanne Ryan. She's at Keto Karma, literally everywhere online. Go look at her YouTube videos. You're not as active on there anymore, but go watch her original journey. It's always fun to kind of go back and watch those again and see all the updates. But these days, she's an international best-selling author all over the world. When the pandemic lifts, you'll eventually get to like travel the world and do some tours again. But Simply Keto was her big first book, and the one we kind of been basing a lot of things we're talking about today about Beyond Simply Keto. So go check those out and go buy some of them crackers. DefyFood.com is the website for that. And of course, ketokarma.com is your main website. But Suzanne, thank you. Always good to see you, my dear.
Thank you so much. Love you, Jimmy.
Love you too.